Comprehensive Eggplant Functional Testing, a rapid and complete solution to testing applications using Eggplant Functional Tester. So Eggplant Functional Tester is a state-of-the-art automation framework. You can automate any UI platform as well as calling APIs. It provides a powerful scripting language to build complex automation. It integrates with Eggplant Manager to orchestrate your DevOps pipeline. And it links with the Eggplant AI engine to auto-build dynamic tests just before you run the automation, and lets users quickly update their page models when screens change. So before we get into the details of the solution, just a quick description of VIP. So it's a complete testing framework. At its heart, it's got Test Modeler, which is a BPMN modeling tool which will auto-create you all sorts of different types of covered test cases, a TDM solution to help you create very complex synthetic data, an automation framework, and today we're talking about the integration with the Eggplant Functional Tester, virtualization support so we can create you virtual endpoints, and integration with the RPA solution, VIP's core integration processor, which helps you build a really state-of-the-art DevOps pipeline. As you would expect, information flows between the components, letting you track from your requirements, through your code, through your testing, to your test data, to your environments, your expected and your actual results. VIP provides specific features to supplement the core Eggplant functionality, including integration with VIP Test Data Manager, a powerful test data management tool, integration with VIP Test Modeler, a state-of-the-art requirements modeling and test case design tool, integration with VIP Virtualize to create matching virtual services. VIP at its heart provides a core set of connectors to expand the type of automation available, for example REST, API, SAP, etc. VIP provides integration between Eggplant many DevOps tools, for example integration with TFS, Jira, Git, and other development toolsets. VIP is a full RPA, robotics process automation tool, that can be called by Eggplant Functional Tester or can call Eggplant Functional Tester itself. The VIP framework can run the automation tests for you. There's not really any scripting or technical skill. Most of the configuration is done inside Excel. The test data is calculated just before the automation runs. If the web page changes, use Eggplant to recapture the page objects, standard Eggplant functionality. If the logic changes, you update the business process model and recreate the tests in a few seconds. You can choose the different types of coverage depending on the time and the risk. You can measure the coverage and explore failures easily. You can manage multiple testing tools under one framework, so you might have some Selenium scripts, some API scripts, and some Eggplant Functional Tester, and they can all be handled under one automation framework. You can prepare the right test data, virtual endpoints, and messages just in time, just before the automation runs. You can build a model from automated exploratory or manual testing. You can use business process modeling tools to create the application logic. You can use behavior-driven design or test-driven design to design your requirements and tests. The model is mapped then to the objects and Eggplant actions. The model is mapped to advanced test data functions. The expected results are defined as part of the model. So before we start, I'll just show you the components we're going to be showing you. We'll show you around Test Modeler, a little bit about that, a very small bit on test data management, obviously the core bit, which is the integration with the Eggplant Functional Tester, and then right at the end we'll just show you a little bit of the DevOps++, which is some integration with the TFS framework. So the demo is made up of 5 components. First of all, a quick look at Visual Integration Processor, so you kind of understand what it is. Define the requirement logic using VIP Test Modeler. Then we're going to import the Eggplant handlers and attach them to the model. We're going to create the automation components, configure and run the automation, and actually pass the results back into the model. And finally, we'll just have a quick look at the test data preparation facilities available inside VIP. So this is VIP, Visual Integration Processor. This is where you design the flows. Once you've designed them, you would normally run them in a command script. For example, over here I've got a monitor running in a command script on one machine. So it's very drag and drop. This is the first one we're looking at here is to do with Selenium, and it's just drag and drop, drop that onto the palette, set the attributes, and away you go. This one here is doing something with emails and it's monitoring an email client, looking to see if there's any new trial requests and then making sure they're valid and sending them out. This one here is monitoring our test modeler to see what activity is going on, and then it's pushing information out to Slack. And these two here, this one's actually looking at the categories using an API out in Amazon, and this one is doing a similar thing, looking at different types of product category suggestions for eBay. If you look at the palette down the left hand side, you'll see lots and lots of things. There's a very strong PDF parsing engine, emailing, sending emails, this is the Selenium automation, serializing and deserializing XML, and we'll use that later on when we look at the results of the Eggplant scripts, and we'll push them out to TFS. Lots of stuff to do with REST requests and SOAP requests. Lots of features and functionalities to do with Excel. We try and keep Excel in your DevOps world, and what we'll do is we'll just update the Excel sheets automatically or read data from them, and it's a very powerful set of functionality there. TFS, as we've seen, there's Jira connectivity, there's Git connectivity, and as I talked about, Slack connectivity. So let's do a bit of modeling of the requirements here. So we're going to be taking a look at the NOP commerce. Initially we're going to be just modeling the login, and then we'll go into the add products to cart. So we go to test modeler, and you'll see here we've already created a few models, and what we're going to do is take a look at the login model. And here you'll see we have a set of valid, invalid, valid password, invalid passwords, a starting point and two ending points. If we go and have a look at the product, you'll see here we have cameras, computers, etc., and again non-empty and empty cards. So this is basically the business process modeling tool. You can add in tasks, you can join decisions to it. It's all very straightforward, very drag and drop. Later on we'll show you how to add in test data, etc. And if we go back up to the shopping master, you'll see here that what we've done is we've actually come in and we've actually used it as a sub-process. And that's the best way to design it, so you can kind of chain together sub-processes and test them in isolation of each other. And you can see here that we're kind of working our way through the logic, which is in effect the requirements, and then we can go off and look at the test cases that we've created, and each one of those test cases is going to show you a particular route or journey through your requirements testing logic. And then if you go into the coverage, there are different types of coverage techniques that you can use dependent on the types of testing you're up to: exhaustive, minimal, medium, etc. And that's very much based on the amount of time you have available to do to test the feature or functionality or requirement that you're looking at. So very much the best way to use the Eggplant functional tester is to create handlers. In the IDE you'll see browser handler, cart handler, etc. And if you look at them, you'll see on launch browser, and you'll see that some of them have in effect parameters which are passed into them. So you have a couple of different on launch browser, on browser URL, on close, and if you go through you'll see them, and you've got all of the power of the egg script in here. Here you've got wait 10 seconds. If you look in here, you're going to say wait for 30 for an expected image, which is in fact an assertion. So the way it works is we go off and we go into VIP, and we have a flow called create object model, and we can set the parameters and run it from here. We're more likely to set it up as a command prompt, but the result is those test handlers then become page objects that we can access inside the modeler. So if we look at here, we've got modules, and you'll see the handlers, each handler or function. If we look here, browser URL, it has a set of parameters, and cart handler, add to cart, etc. And any parameters are then passed into test modeler. So we can go back to our models, and let's go and have a look at the NOP commerce and look at login. And you'll see here we have a little tab called test automation, and all we really have to do is if we just look at the login action and click on actions, you'll see we've just attached, and you can have as many of these as you want, the handlers, and then we've also attached the username and password, which are data variables. So if we go to test data and look at the test data variables associated with username and look at assignment, you see we've got a username like so. And if we look here, we've got password, etc. So you can set the test data independently. You can actually create test cases which are very test data rich and then overlay them later onto your automation framework. So we're just switching around here to our assignments for automation and for test data. If we go into the test data itself, back to test data, you'll see in here we have an extremely powerful test data library, and if you click in here, we've got lots and lots and lots of test data management functions that you can play around with, and it's all based on the Excel framework, so you can use, if you're familiar with Excel, it doesn't take much to build and link and create very powerful test data lookups, functionality, etc. inside the modeler. Right, so now let's go and assemble this and put it all together. So we'll go back to our shopping master, and we again take a look at our test generation. So this is the definition of the entire flow that we're going to test, and here you'll see the various test cases that we're interested in. And what I've done is I've created positive tests, negative, and I've actually gone through and created a lot of tests, which is at the highest, most exhaustive level. But we'll start with the idea of negative and positive, and then all we have to do then up here is literally just click on this button, click download data, pick on the VIP template, and what that will do, that's going to download the components that our automation framework needs to assemble the test data, create the scripts, because we'll actually dynamically create the Eggplant scripts, run them, and what we're going to do then is put the results back up into Modeler, and we're actually going to link the results then into the TFS framework. So all you have to do is click accept, bring that down, and then you'll pop that into a folder, and then I'll just show you the automation controller running. So each one of these sets of covered tests have been popped into a different folder, so we'll have a quick look at negative. For the most part, you don't need to mess around with these. If you do want to get into some more advanced test data generation, you can open up the data template, and in here you'll see, for example, maybe in this case we're trying to create a bunch of negative tests with invalid login user IDs. You can come in here and use the built-in data generation TDM functions that are available. So you could have put that directly into Modeler, as I showed you before, or you could actually just put them in here. You might want to come in and just find something interesting that's going to work for this. So maybe a hacker phrase, which we're just going to pop in and pop that in, and that's going to come out of that. And you can repeat that if you want to. You can just literally put as many of these as you want into the test data, like so. We also have a configuration file which you need to set up, and here we're doing NOP shopping. Now this is kind of important, because what we can do then, once you've done it for one, you can pretty much do the same for all of them. So we see we're doing our NOP shopping. We've got 4 or 5 different types of coverage that we'll be running, but each one, so the first thing we can do is resolve, which is going to take that data template and turn it into real data. We're then going to create the egg scripts, we're going to run the egg scripts, we're going to capture the results, and then we're going to synchronize it with TFS itself. So each flow can be exposed in here. So TFS is a specific VIP flow, and it's just up to you really to decide on, anything you really want to do as part of your DevOps framework can be added in here. You can set the parameters associated with them, pass them around between them, and this then in effect is the flow of the automation controller, which I'm just about to show you. So what we're going to do is run the automation controller from a command prompt. Now in this case we are the automation framework, but you could also embed this. If you already have a good existing automation framework, then you would just make a small call out to us, and we would go and run the test plant scripts and do all of the updating of TFS, capturing the results, etc., etc. So all you're really going to do is just fire that off. Now a few things are going to happen. So first things is that we're actually going to go off and we will create a little audit of all the different parts of it. The first one is we're actually just going to create a little file, which is kind of the input file, which is the starter, and as we move through each of these steps, that we've designed, it will then create spreadsheets so you can keep track of where you are. So one of them is going to go and resolve the original test data. It might explode into a number of different test cases, then it's going to run them, then it might do some post validation where it's looking up some expected results and exercising some Excel to compare the results. So that's firing off in the background, and what that will do then, that will go off, and what it will in effect do is it will generate you the egg script. Now it puts a little GUID around it so we can track it back, and that's important because we need to be able to track that back to the modeler. And then if we take a look at the run, this would run normally in a batch mode. That will then run that through. Now a couple of things will also happen if we go back up into, let's go back to modeler. What you will see if we look at Shopping Master and we look at the test cases, so let's just have a look at those test cases. There's the model, and we might look at something like negative tests, and you will see here that the negative tests have passed. So we've run through those successfully, and what we'll also do is we will then put up into, in this case we've connected it to TFS, so these are the runs, and that's going to give me a detailed description of the run, and in here you'll see that, and you'll see actually the log file that's come in from test plant itself, which we can open up and have a look at. That's been captured and moved into TFS, and then we'll also actually create the test plans as well. So we can actually go in and look at these steps that have been created. So this could work with something like Mercury ALM or TFS or Jira or whatever you want really. So that's the core process that you would use to run your test plant automation. So just a quick description of some of the test data management functionalities. So at its core we've got a set of TDM libraries which overlay into the Excel product. Now Excel itself has a whole bunch of plugins which allow you to go off and get data from, you know, SharePoint, from databases and various other things like Facebook and Salesforce. But with the addition of VIP, obviously we can manipulate the using Eggplant scripting, where we can also connect into APIs, anything else really that is needed to prepare maybe some assets that the automation requires, or to look up values, or to allocate particular data to your test cases. That then runs through a step called resolved, and resolved in effect is the data preparation step, which would run just before you run your automation. We can also do synthetic data. There's a bunch of videos on that separately, where we can put data into back-end databases and also maybe create some virtual services that are required for the automation. And then really the system under test is using the resolved data and the matching data then to go out and, you know, actually get the results and then feed them back into the framework. So in summary, VIPs are a powerful addition to the Eggplant tools. There's lots of time-saving features. There is very little technical knowledge. You might get into a little bit of VIP scripting, but for the most part you would just be adjusting the configuration files in Excel. You can easily synchronize your existing Eggplant handlers with your requirements. All you have to do is import them into the object model and then attach them to the business process model. You can save time by code generating your automation scripts, so the scripts are generated for you as well as the data. You can rapidly update your scripts every time a requirement changes, so instead of having to go back and look at each script to see if it's still valid or appropriate, all you have to do is to change the business process model, and we will then code generate the scripts for you, which is, saves you an enormous amount of time. You can also deduplicate your tests, so we could import the tests and optimize them down. Generally you will find there's a lot of scripts that have been copied and tweaked slightly, and if you bring them in and clean them up, you end up with less scripts, and then you can improve the coverage by using some of the coverage techniques to sort of increase the amount of coverage by factors of 2 or 3 or 4. You can increase the quality by obviously using the mathematics to create the tests, all the different types of test coverage we have. You can increase the quality and the variation of test data, and by tracking exactly what features you're testing, so in other words linking your Jira requirements with your Git check-ins to the actual test cases themselves, it's much easier to go and pinpoint failure. And what you can also do is then auto-generate maybe some exhaustive tests to explore a failure in more detail. So thanks for taking the time to look at VIP's support for Eggplant.